But I was walking around the playground with a girlfriend, and I could feel all the air shift. And I knew something was happening, but I didn't know what. And then two girls started walking behind us from our class, and one of them started kicking my knees in from the back so
Oh my
that I
goodness.
was buckling. And I started to get scared. And so my friend and I are walking faster. And then I don't know how this happened. I only have these fuzzy memories, but somehow it built into a kind of climax, like where there was a little bit of a mini possession of the girls in my class.
Oh
And
my
I
God.
ganged up on. I was around the side of the building, and I got kicked in the stomach and kicked in the head.
Oh
And
my gosh.
I was getting ganged up on. But while it was happening and I was in the shock of it and the trauma, I experienced every cell in me becoming Christ.
Hello, everyone. This is Eric Taylor, back with another amazing episode of my Knowledge is Love Astrology podcast. Today, on episode 240, I have truly an amazing woman. She has a master's in theology. She is a former nun, an author many times over. We'll find out about that. She used to work at the famous Omega Institute doing different meditations and leading meditations. She's a teacher and a mentor, and she works and has been a presenter and a panelist, or will be a presenter and a panelist, for IANDS, the International Association of Near-Death Studies, which I will be a part of and am now a member of myself this coming August. I present today and welcome Miss Kimberly Braun to the show. How are you today, Kimberly?
Oh, I'm doing great, and I'm doing even better now that we're having this conversation.
Oh, I'm so excited that you're here joining me. And I mean, that was a mouthful. You are truly dynamic. I'm going to jump into your birth chart in a second, but I want to kind of find out because I am fascinated. Tell me about the master's in theology and when you became a nun. That is beautiful and so fascinating.
Hmm. Both of those, which are really, they were incredibly formative and illuminative. They were also the natural progression of the direction my life was going anyway. So from a really young age, mystical experiences, we call them STEs and all sorts of other names we give them, were the world I was living in. And so uh, deeply moved by spirit and held in a cosmology that everything is coming into form from an eternal source is simply how I was navigating life. And unsolicited by me in my late teens, things really exploded. I went through a big dark night, but then I had a massive breakthrough.
Mm.
And when that happened, my life simply became multidimensional and otherworldly in many ways.
Wow.
And so I was on fire for love of God. I mean, that's the only way to put it, is I was feeling myself pursued by this love and I was on fire. And so it was really natural then after a few years to join a monastery, because whenever we're in love, we want more of what we're in love with.
Right. Oh my gosh. Now, so wait, that's fascinating in itself, right? That love and passion, but you speak in such spiritual terms, not necessarily dogmatic religion. Now, growing up in Ohio, right? Were you raised devout Catholic or Christian? What was your family?
Yeah, so my family was Catholic. However, as divine providence would have it, when I was little, there was this priest that came to our church, and he brought a program called Christ Renews His Parish, which set the parish, the community, on fire. And
Mm.
gifts of the Spirit became the way my mom and dad were Catholic. So they had women's groups and men's groups, and there were laying on of hands healing and prophecy and all sorts of beautiful gifts that allowed connection to the divine be at the heart of our family life. And I was predisposed to that. My orientation was already, because I was already loving nature that way and
Right.
life that way. So my formation allowed some spaciousness. It didn't teach me how to speak about all these experiences,
Mm.
but it did naturally make it safe and acceptable to be open to the unexpected.
Wow. So, okay, so I want a little bit more detail, but about the mystical experiences and even the dark night of the soul experience. But let me just say this. Miss Kimberly is the Aries sun in the 8th house, the Virgo rising, and the Cancer moon in the 11th house conjunct Jupiter. And we'll kind of connect those dots because so much of her chart really connects to all the multi-facets that she's experienced and done and is still doing in her life. So where were you at around 10 years old? Did you, was that kind of when that shifted in the church? And in terms of being Catholic, were you, because of this experience, were you Catholic, but more of a Catholic that actually read the Bible?
We drew upon the inspiration of Jesus.
Mm,
Remember, drawing upon that. The liturgies we had were so alive. And I think where I connected most was I did experience God in the Eucharist.
mm,
In fact, at my first communion, which is year 7 at that time,
okay.
I remember as the host was in my mouth, I burst into this ecstatic joy, and everything around me was light being. All the people I saw around me burst into beings of light, and uh, so
Wow.
so in a way, Catholic was very strong, the ritual, but the ritual for me was a way of stepping into the unknown, my Aries part of me, I suppose. The willingness to go on the adventure and plunge into the depths of things.
Oh, head first. That's right. Oh my gosh, that's
Totally.
beautiful.
So, I was oriented that way. I would say when I was 10, I was still in Catholic school. It was right before we moved to Florida.
Okay.
And the significant experience that I had is really interesting because I can remember that it was very surreal. So my mystical experiences started when I was 5. It didn't
Re-
start, it was
Oh,
much earlier, but I had this experience that was, oh, so incredible. So I was naturally intellectually gifted, and so I didn't fit into school real well.
okay.
But I was walking around the playground with a girlfriend, and I could feel all the air shift. And I knew
Mm.
something was happening, but I didn't know what. And then 2 girls started walking behind us from our class, and one of them started kicking my knees in from the back
Oh
so that
my
I was
goodness.
buckling. And I started to get scared. And so my friend and I are walking faster. And then I don't know how this happened. I only have these fuzzy memories, but somehow it built into a kind of climax, like where there was a little bit of a mini possession of the girls in my class.
Oh
And
my
I
gosh.
ganged up on. I was around the side of the building, and I got kicked in the stomach and kicked in the head,
Oh
and
my gosh.
I was getting ganged up on. But while it was happening and I was in the shock of it and the trauma, I experienced every cell in me becoming Christ,
Wow.
completely wordless. And as I was there, all I felt was compassion. I didn't feel anything else other than just this immense compassion within myself, just for me, and outwardly moving. And then
Towards them, even towards them?
even towards them, yeah, it was just effortless. It was not in my mind. It was not me trying to be holy. It was a cellular change. And as I was vibrating that Christ essence, and it was surreal around me, two little second graders, because I was in fourth grade, second graders walked by and they stopped, and one of them looked at me and they said, "Look at her. She looks just like Jesus."
Oh my
They
goodness.
yelled out. Right. And right. And then somehow it all ended. And what that did within me was it left me very soft around the play of this world,
Mm.
seeming dark and light and good and bad. And it left me even more with this interpenetration of the Christ essence.
Wow.
And that's not the only time that that Christ essence has kind of come alive in my cells. So that's the only thing I remember from 10 years old was that happening, and how mysterious it was and how many dimensions it was for
And
me.
this is right before you left to move to Florida.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so this is so powerful because, and I'm so sorry that that happened, but right, so
Yeah.
connecting this to your natal birth chart, right, having the Virgo rising, what you were describing, and you said the key word, compassion, you have Neptune and Scorpio in the third house, that's elementary school and local community. And so I'm envisioning that, and Neptune and Scorpio, kind of like you said earlier, it is that energy of being the mystic and being mystical.
Mhm.
And almost like I could almost literally envision that keyword for Scorpio, that transformation, where
Mm.
here you are kind of in a way being like, hurt and hit and abused. But then it's like there was that transformation that you were becoming at that same time through the cellular level, more Christ-like, where even that younger kids even use that term. And that's kind of in a trine to your 11th house where you have Cancer Moon conjunct Jupiter. And that's like social network, but dealing with groups and organizations. So that's kind of, wow. I just have chills like all over right now. And I'm just like, oh my God. But so that's very, very powerful and very literal. So, okay, jumping off this Moon Jupiter conjunction, because when you got your master's in theology, explain that process and then what it actually felt like for you to be a nun. Because that Jupiter conjunction, Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, and then it's conjunct the moon, which is at home in Cancer, in the 11th house of organization. So that's that divine, like sacred mother, divine knowledge and teaching to groups and organizations. And that's the theology and the nun practice and experience. So share that with the audience, like what it felt like for you and just the process and how, I guess, was it purifying in a way?
Purifying's a good word, but I'm not sure it quite captures the experience. So since I was so on fire with love
Yeah.
when I entered, and I didn't enter from a place of seeking something, I felt already completely full. And I entered
Mm.
because all of these mystics of other eras kept showing up to me, and they all ended up being Carmelites, and they were my friends. And so joining a Carmelite order made sense because it felt like I was coming home to my friends who we had like experiences and like heart and like mind. So when I entered, there was that. There were a lot of different layers, but I had a lot of visions and a lot of dreams and a lot of guidance that kept me very anchored into the essential aspect of monastic life. And that is that it's about me and the divine, period.
Mm.
And I gave myself 100% so that this truth could come alive in me, that I would develop the capacity to look with the beloved's eyes, and I would see the beloved's face in all things. And that was happening. And I never wavered from that single focus. So
Right.
everything was a sacrament to me. I mean, everything was really alive. It doesn't mean that there weren't layers of human weaknesses, that if you read my books, you'll see that monastic life isn't pure. Like, human beings, we have a lot to work through. And so
Oh,
it's not like you joined a community that's already pure. It's
right.
that there's a magnification upon the inner world so that it can grow and evolve. And I did find within myself the places within me where there was fear, where there
Mm.
were traumas, where there was beliefs that weren't true. They came forward to be healed in that silence and in that change and in that encounter of the beloved in all things, because I didn't get distracted by other things. So it was overall, it was really powerful. And what it led me to, which my new book that just came out, what it led me to, Eric, which was so phenomenal, is I was this open channel. Get this, my name was Sister Annunziata, to share the good news. That was my
Wait, say it again, Sister Annunziata?
Annunziata, yes.
That's
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah,
To
yeah.
share the good news.
It's like that's my fiber. I ended up 6 years into living in that monastic lifestyle, receiving a call to build a monastery, and I was downloaded with everything I needed to know to do it. And it's worth $9 million. And I knew how to do shop drawings. I knew how to be an architect. I knew how to be a general contractor. I knew how to be a fundraiser. I knew how to organize crews. And it was downloaded to me. I'd never done it.
Oh my God. Wait. Okay. So you're just like blowing my head. First of all, I get caught up in your tonality and how you speak. It is so um, powerful, but soothing, calm, and very soft and spiritual. Now, you're the Virgo rising, and you have Pluto and Uranus on the ascendant. And from, that sort of generation, it's a strong healing marker. And you just said so many key words that really speak to those placements, right? Pluto deals with our soul psychology, and it's about our pain and trauma and crisis and transformation, and holds energies from the past and early childhood. And then Uranus is the awakener, the spiritual awakener, freedom, liberation, breaking the social norms, fracturing the structures. So in some ways in your life, because let's be honest, like people wouldn't say like, oh, well, you just lived the normal life. Nothing sounds really normal. Were you kind of comfortable and always, I don't want to say it like in a negative way, because some people take it negatively, but in a positive way, were you kind of always a trailblazer, a vanguard, maybe a little bit of a rebel or the black sheep of the family?
I have always been called into unexpected unknowns, largely in pioneering something.
Yes.
And I knew at an early age too that part of my love and call is to be on the edge of my own truth. And I experienced it. It wasn't something like I'm always going to be on the edge of my
Right, right.
as part of myself. I knew that was so, and I knew then that all relationships and that would always be in constellation with that. Like there are primary impetuses in my life that are it, period.
Okay.
And when I have had moments when I've wanted something that wasn't in alignment with that, I never had peace until I let that go.
Mm.
So these certain truths of myself have ended up that, yes, there have been ways of being solitary. There have been ways of, and there have been also waves of massive loss and destruction, like just everything whoosh,
Wow.
sweeping through. And somehow in it, even if it's crushing, I still feel held.
Mm.
There's kind of this undeniable,
Right. Well,
not
that connection to the creator, right? The connection to God, and that. So when you say that, now this is, kind of powerful, but right, people listening would assume, the master's in theology and being a nun. Now, were you ever married, or did you ever have children, or did you ever want those things?
I longed for, and I still have that within me, but not as much of a longing anymore, a soul partner.
Okay.
I love children so much. I know I've never been married. Um, I love children to pieces. I would have loved to have had them if in soul partnership that was the right creative step. So that's what's been there for me. So there's been a lot that's been very non-traditional,
Right.
and largely because I've been so impelled by some other things that have just led me into really unknown waters.
Mm. So tell us about the books. I know you kind of already hinted to the newest one, but take us how many, and take us to the first book and the process in writing it, because I'm almost sensing the way that you speak and the way that you kind of shared some of your personal experiences was even the first book sort of like kind of like downloaded into you.
Totally. Oh gosh. So I had in 2014, I always knew that I would start writing books, and I
Uh-huh.
see myself writing a lot more.
Yeah.
And it was I did a soul writing. I used to do it every year for 30 days, which is beautiful. And within that, it became alive. It's time to write. It's time to write the manuscript for the first book. And my work lined up in such a way that it gave me the spaciousness for it. Well, literally, I started January in 2014, and I knew I would finish by March 25th. And March 24th at noon, I literally and metaphorically set down my pen and had written 608 pages. And it was effortless. It was just like it was just,
Oh my gosh.
yeah. And then this manuscript for this most recent book that I handed into the publisher was 860 pages.
So you're not just writing books, you're like giving birth to like these canons. Like that's incredible. Wait, so tell us the first name of the first book and what was it really about?
Sure. So the first book title is Love Calls: Insights of a Former Carmelite Nun. And it answers, it starts the journey, my own unfolding in grace in God, and the revelations, healings, illuminations of that. It starts that. So it's memoir based, but it's not intended to be like a historical story.
Okay.
It's more meant to open up to the inner evolution of the soul. And it answers a question, because when I first left the monastery, and it was hard to answer this question at first, I was constantly being asked, why did you enter? Why did you leave? Why did you enter? Why did you leave? Why did you enter?
Right.
And
Because it's fascinating to people. They're like, why? You're like curious, yeah.
Yeah, totally. And I totally get it. But it was sounding almost like a career choice. Like, why did you become an accountant? Why did you, and
Right. And there's so much complexity and nuance to that whole spiritual experience, I'm sure, yeah.
Totally. So it's a way of answering that question to point to the real answer. And the answer is that I've experienced over and again that my very center is divine love, and that love is constantly calling, if you will. Constantly desiring, the holy desire, the divine desiring, constantly awakening me, or an as me, for me, in me to it. And so it answers that question. And it's very playful. That first book is like a little honeymoon. It's like a very light, it gives you all the little lessons in fear, little times I was afraid, and then a grace came. And it's beautiful, but it's very relatable. I did not include my more notable mystical experiences, because I didn't want to share stories that left people feeling like they wanted that, or I'm something different than them. So I used all stories that were very relatable.
Okay. Yeah.
But over time, I've realized I need to actually communicate those stories as well, because they're very beautiful. The second book is a book of some of my poetry. I have a poetry is my favorite way of communicating.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love poetry.
Yeah, it does not surprise me, Eric.
Yeah. That is definitely so it's kind of funny that you say that, because the Cancer moon and I'm a Capricorn moon are opposites, but both very similar in the creative writing. So when you said that, and then obviously, like I was saying, that moon in the 11th house with the Jupiter, it really speaks to weaving those words of faith and abundance and just blessed in such a powerful, beautiful way. So I'm just like fascinated. Now I'm like, oh wow. So can I get it at Amazon, or where do you have the book at?
Totally. And the book that's out right now, wait on the first book because I'm putting out a second edition in about a month.
Okay.
There were some things that I felt really were meant to be in there that didn't make the first edition.
Okay.
But the third book that just came out, you can even get it on Audible, and they let me read it, which is really nice.
My best friend, Audible.
Yeah, I know, right? It's so.
I love it.
So, and then the last book, and I can actually hold it up. My publisher did such great covers. This book is so beautiful.
Oh wow!
Naked Light.
I love that. So okay, so wait. So tell us about this, but you I also want the name of the second and the third book, because this is book number 4, correct?
The third. That's the third.
Oh, this is the third. Okay, sorry.
This book is poetry. It's Beloved Found. And then the fourth book that's written actually will come after I finish the service to Miracles in the Naked Light. Because when you write a book, a lot of times your service is about that for a while. So once that comes to a completion, I'll put the fourth book out. And the Miracles in the Naked Light are the continuation. It takes you deep within the monastic experience. And
now explain that for the audience, because some people may not know those terms, right? Because you said the monastic, but then you also said the Carmelite nun. So explain those two words, because I think I know, but for the audience or myself, let's bring it to the light with clarity.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So a monastic life in the Christian tradition is very similar when you think of like a Buddhist monastery, which is more known to us in our Western culture.
Yes.
So it's a lifestyle that is oriented around the awakening process. Usually you live in community and you don't leave. You have hours and hours of meditation and chant and spiritual readings and prayer. And we lived off the land, which not all can do, because depending on where you live, you can't do that. And you really are an outpouring of service in the world on those levels as well. So you're there for the communion with the divine, but you're also rippling out an energetic service to the world as well. It's an intense lifestyle in many ways. It's very simple. You just have a very simple room. You don't own a lot of stuff. You let go of ownership.
Wow.
Hold everything in common. And it's very steady. Like we got up at midnight, then we get up again at 5:30, then we go to bed by 9. And within that, you had 7-8 hours of the chanting and the meditation, the prayer and all that.
That is deep.
It's very deep. Yeah, it's very deep.
That's a real devotion. But it's so funny. I don't just like that. I love that, because that does speak to even your Aries sun in 8th house and the ruler being in the 12th house. So it speaks to kind of you being lit up in the spiritual realm, but also in isolation, in like a Montessori, in spiritual retreats and stuff like that. So it's like kind of, this is powerful for me, because how your experiences connect to your natal birth chart, it's only God. And that's what I try to explain to people, right? I became a born again Christian in 1999 and gave myself, to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And, but years later, I got into astrology. Now, when I first became a Christian, I, believed like everybody else, oh, astrology is a sin and this and that. But as I started to, I think, went through a major sickness, but in some ways, that didn't diminish my faith. It only increased my faith, being so sick. But it actually drew me closer to God as I got connected to the astrology. And then I started to understand that astrology is all in the Bible, the Torah, and the Quran. And then I just got so, it was just really powerful. So I think about like your chart and how it's aligned, and you speak in such spiritual terms that maybe a quote unquote Catholic or quote unquote Christian may not. So
Right. It's
my
true.
question is, like, how do you view those things and spirituality conceptually with, so, kind of organized religion? And then at the same time, were you ever kind of tapped by the Holy Spirit speaking in tongues, which now a lot of people like to call it light language? And I'm like, yeah, that's speaking in tongues. So share those two kind of insights with the audience.
Yeah, thank you. And it's a really good point because I'm still navigating it. And it's interesting that I am called into many forms of service that help to heal the various wounds around all of this. So generally speaking, I didn't seek that out, but I just have finding myself in that service. And because of my experience of the eternal source in all, and it's been so all consuming, I feel a deep honoring of all the pathways,
Mm.
that everything is about love casting out fear. So I can understand the methodology of a pathway, the emotional intelligence of a path, the systematics of a path, and I feel appreciation for its mechanisms that
Mm.
are to help support the heart and the mind to the surrender into the what is really the soul path.
Yeah.
So I'm at ease around all of those. So it's, for me, it's not divisive. They're just distinctions. That being said, oh no, I am commonly, it's not been uncommon for me to be held as heretical or off base, or I've been of the devil, just a lot of things like that because of the undeniable experiences that I've had.
Right.
Um, but when I went into seminary right from the monastery, I was so guided and blessed. And that was in 2001. I was 34 when I started there, ended when I was 36. And
That connects right to your Cancer moon and Jupiter at 34.
wow,
That's
uh, it was
that's
hard.
powerful.
I love learning. And I was with mystic professors, and I got to form my own program, and it let me add it let me add wonderful reflection to what my experience was,
Mm.
me step into how to hear other people and hear other experiences and understand the workings of things, the workings of divine in nature and divine in the human mind, and the concepts that go with that. So for me, it was a playground. I really loved it. I did not like the pomp and circumstance. I am not a person that I don't like arrogance. I don't like rhetoric. It's really of what's really of the heart here.
Yeah.
But I was fortunate to be in an environment where I found a place there really well. Uh, so my theology has helped me. It doesn't leave me desiring to have dialogues that are more divisive. I,
Mm.
I don't find that I have the aptitude or the skills yet to navigate. For instance, if someone is going to have a much stronger fundamentalist base of looking at a certain theological principle,
Right.
I don't really have the skills to navigate that conversation because I tend to be so open to what's possible.
Mm.
Attitude would be, but could we look at it this way too? Or could experience. So there are ways that I'm very skillful with my dialogue. I'm very theologically solid. I mean, I'm really solid, but there are ways that I'm just not naturally gifted in the dialogues. So,
Right.
so
Well, it sounds like you're so heart-based, though, and really, that makes me think about, and I don't know if I'm sure you probably have heard and read like Jesus and the Essenes, and it makes me think that you are more, really following the intention and spirit and energy and teachings of Yeshua than compared to organized textbook doctrine that was kind of brought together by King James. Is that a fair thing to say, or is it?
definitely, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely so, definitely so,
Wow.
and
That's
yeah,
beautiful. Yeah.
and beautifully so too, right? As you well know.
Well, yeah, because, I can tell you, I mean, for me, I went through my near-death experience and being in coma for 40 days and almost dying and probably, coding and, them not really, speaking of it in certain ways, but in the hospital for 85 days, that's who I called on. I called on Jesus. And I tell people two things that I do. I never play games with God, and I'm definitely not holier than thou or a perfect man, but my heart and really my heart chakra has always been open. I've always been pure, and then I've always had, as I call it, hashtag deep water faith. And so for me, I think that's why I'm still here to this day to be able to interview you and share on my Knowledge is Love podcast, which is an eism that I created years ago when I was teaching multiply severely disabled children in the Bronx. Because to me, when you do love someone, you should keep them in the know. They should never have to guess, assume, or believe because they can do that wrong. Therefore, knowledge is love. And that love of Christ, the way that you speak about it, it is clearly your calling. And it is clearly, and I'm sure even with your mentoring and the work. So take us now into that love and then how it connects through your books, through your nun work, your theology, but how does it connect to, and when did you get connected with IANDS, and then also some of the spiritual mentoring work that you do, and do you still do the meditation work as well?
Sure. Yeah, I'm very blessed. I have an online small spiritual community. We do meditation immersions through the year.
Okay.
And I have some online courses. One is an 8-week meditation course. It's just, I love it because it's non-dogmatic and non-tradition based, but it draws upon the wealth of so many traditions. And it's very specific. So it helps you get really clear on this practice for yourself. I do one-on-one sessions, and those sessions are spiritual mentoring, meditation coaching, energetic intuitive guidance, and even Reiki training. And I can participate in healings, passive and active, for people.
Okay. Well, to give them the information, tell them where they can go, because that sounds delightful.
Oh yeah, all on my website, kimberlybraun.com. kimberlybraun.com. Everything is there. My books are there, my ways to connect with me there. And IANDS came through a personal invite because I had a near-death experience when I was 19.
Oh.
And it was deeply impactful, as they all are. But it was also built upon everything else because of my other mystical things.
Right.
And so I've never focused on that story directly, because there's just me in the service of people's awakenings, and that story just didn't come forward as helpful. And last year I was invited to participate, and I said yes, and it was wonderful. And there was a place and there was a rightness of sharing my particular story there. And then they asked me to volunteer to help cultivate more dynamic panels, and I was blessed to do that.
Yeah.
And now I'll be giving one of the hour talks this coming conference that'll let me go into the theme is called Redeeming Love. And it's a little tongue-in-cheek because redemption kind of gets a bad rap. It talks, it's a bit like I'm a sinner and I'm going to be redeemed. And that's not at all what I mean. I actually was, Ajashanti's a friend of mine, and he had given this talk on redeeming love. And I loved his use of the word, because redeeming is simply remembering love.
Yeah.
If you look at the etymology, it's not a sacrificial action that needs to happen from the outside for yourself. It is actually infused with the awakening process.
Yeah.
So
Like a soul remembering, right?
Yeah, I'm a little tongue-in-cheek with the use of the word. And that's IANDS. So it was really simple. It was a bit like some things happen in my life, very unsolicited, came about. Right thing to do. I'll be there this year, and blessed to be a part of it. Yeah.
Wow, that sounds so powerful. So you said that you were on a panel last year. So how was that experience, and how much are you expanding or changing in terms of what you're sharing this year as a more of a frontline speaker?
Right. Well, when you get more time, there's more you can do with that time.
Yeah,
I had a blast. My two panelists and I, we had so much fun co-creating the process.
yeah,
And it was like we were little transmitters when we were there. And the bits and pieces of our stories that played into our panel were just what meant to be. There wasn't a lot of time and space to each tell our whole stories.
right.
I loved the way the three of us had very unique experiences and came forward with a couple messages that were universal for us all,
Yes.
then many other nuances that were completely different, showing the beauty of how individual, we're all so different in our paths. So
Yeah.
I love the experience. It was really wonderful. And I loved everyone there. I was told by a friend, she said, you're going to just feel like it's a big family. And honest to goodness, that's what it feels like.
That's how I already feel. I was telling you before the show, because I'm speaking with two Kathys, both amazing women, and have already been on the IANDS podcast with Betty, and she's going to be on the show after you. And the community is so, Rebecca, Tammy, everybody's so welcoming, Marianne, but just like you, it is such a family feeling, and it's like a safe space because when you go through something like this, I am coming up on my 3rd-year anniversary, and on the 2nd-year anniversary, I just decided to really open up the throat chakra and speak my truth of what happened to me, right? And I just shared it, I think, on my Instagram and my YouTube channel, and someone sent that to Jeff Mara, and then I went on this journey since November. I've been probably like on 16 or 17 podcasts now, all a little different, but just speaking and sharing my truth. And to be honest with you, Kimberly, I had no idea about the near-death experience community, IAMS. None of it. You know what I mean? So it was really so organic for me. And that's how God and Spirit moves, right? I wasn't seeking anything. I just was humbly sharing my personal journey and experience on my 2-year anniversary. And then it birthed all of this to now spending this time with you today. And so are you open or willing to share a little bit of what happened to you at 19?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking. I entered a really deep conundrum internally. Some influenced by childhood trauma, some influenced probably by past lives. And there was something that got triggered in me that left me feeling shame and guilt for who I was. Not for what I did, but for actually who I was, and who I was as a very passionately alive human being. And I went through this tremendous darkness around because I felt so spiritual.
Yeah.
And I think people can relate to this because we talk black and white. I was very black and white. I felt that my whole life was so spiritual, but I felt that being passionate wasn't spiritual, or whatever these parts of myself were that were so fiery.
Yeah.
And it had to do with everything. It had to do with intellect. It had to do with sensuality. It had to do with community building and pioneering, like all the elements that you pointed out that are kind of part of my chart. And
That you're saying all the key words: the Aries sun, the Uranus and Virgo, the ascendant, totally, the maverick, the pioneer. Yep.
My truth. Everything felt like it might be bad.
Oh.
And I suffered so badly. I mean, I tried so hard to work through it. My poor mom and dad, who are so sweet and so kind, they had no idea. I developed all these health problems. I
Oh,
was having nightmares that were real past life things,
wow.
migraines. I was having these mysterious ailments. They couldn't figure out what was going on. I was scared to say what was really going on within me
Mm.
because it seems so taboo to even say it out loud, you know? And
Wow.
so in it, I was in a crux, and I kept opening myself for healing or guidance. And I had had so much happen spiritually and so much support. And I wasn't getting touched by the divine in this area of me.
Mm.
And so I was going around, and I developed a lot of mental anguish around it, a lot of circular thinking and being caught. And
Were you depressed?
mildly, yeah. I don't think I was not debilitated because I still was like very active in life.
Right, right, right.
So I wasn't so depressed that I didn't want to get out of bed, but I was in a black hole.
Yeah.
But there was something still so alive in me that you wouldn't have seen it. I mean, my
Right.
big smile and all that, you would have it was very well hidden, my inner demons. And then I moved right when I graduated high school. I moved out to California because I had this intuition that I would be like a fish in water, and I was. It was just great to move. Something about the East is just energetically is not it's life-giving for me. And so as soon
Yeah.
as this other environment, I started opening up in that, but I wasn't out of this black hole.
Mm.
And it lasted it started at the end of 10th grade in high school, lightly. It got worse in 11th grade. And then once I was out on my own, it got even a little bit worse. And I started going to UC Santa Cruz, the college there.
Yeah.
And I had reached a point where I couldn't endure it anymore. So what happened is I reached out for help. And first, I was part of a big non-denominational church. And I reached out for help in my faith community.
Okay.
But I was young and I was naive, and I reached out to whoever my prayer group was. And they were young. And their response was I was sinning.
Mm.
So here I was, right, you get it. You get the,
Yeah.
like, somebody's in a ditch, you don't say, get out of the ditch, you're stupid, like,
Yeah.
that's,
It's-
and as a young adult and hit so hard spiritually on all these levels, I was discouraged. And then I was smart enough, I went to the mental health clinic. And so I reached out for help there, and I was given a counselor that was not very skillful.
Mm.
And unfortunately, when that person did the opposite of what would have been helpful for me, what I needed was to be held. What I needed was just to be heard.
Yeah. Just the love and
I,
the ear. Yeah, the love and the ear.
I just needed to be held and receive love. And the setup of the universe was not to give me that. And when that happened, I actually gave up. And I ended up trying to take my own life.
Mm.
And I'll never repeat the words I said when I looked in the mirror, because my shame was so great. I was so clouded. I was so delusional. And
And this was 19.
at 19, yeah,
Wow.
January 10th, 1987. And what happened is I left my body. Oh, it was so beautiful. And I was with God, but I was in the oneness, the spaciousness.
Mm.
And I was seen and held in a way that was beyond words. And in that unconditional love, I had this exchange between me and the source. And I was completely free. And in that experience, it actually didn't matter whether I lived or died, that it was all okay, that
Wow.
it was all okay. And within this experience out of my body reconnected me. It washed me of the misconceptions that were driving me to that place 100%.
So
And
then you really saw yourself more through God's eyes
I,
instead of your human eyes, right?
yeah.
Wow.
And in that washing, there I was given a choice. And
Mm.
it was okay. I didn't have to go back. And it wasn't a calling to come back. I know some people receive a calling to come back. You know, you're called to come back to go and do this or go and do that. What this eternal source wanted me to have the freedom to was to connect to the passion of my spirituality. What was
Mm.
on fire within me. The very thing that was my demise.
Right, right. Oh my God. And okay, so much is going through my head now. Now, were you hospitalized? Like, was the 911, like what, like who saved you? Like,
Somebody called 911.
okay.
I did end up at a certain point reaching out for help. Something within me, almost like a God source within me, reached out for help. And a former boyfriend, good friend, and he called 911 immediately. But by the time 911 came, I came. I remember that part, that friends were in my room, the paramedics came, and all of that. But then by the time they got me into a chair to carry me out, I left my body.
Oh, wow.
So I don't remember the hospital ride. I don't remember any of that.
And how long were you hospitalized for?
Not long at all. So I went in because I had only overdosed. I hadn't done something else that would require longer hospitalization. And
Okay.
you're giving me a good chance to reflect. So I
Yeah.
left my body. They took me into ICU because I was close. I needed to be revived.
Yeah.
I was gone. And then through the passion of my own desire to actually return, just for the sake of love, not for call, just out of a loving, spontaneous desire within, I landed back in my body and I opened my eyes, and there was a nurse there who was actually an angel.
Mm.
She held me and I wept.
Wow.
I wept. And I was in ICU. And then later on, the doctors came in and all of that. And then what they did is they gave me the night. And I think the next day, I'm pretty sure it was the next day, I think it could have been a day or two. They did an evaluation, obviously. Was I safe? Where was I psychologically? And I was clear as clear could be. I mean, I was
Now,
like,
did they reach out to your parents and your family and all that stuff? Like,
they probably did. They probably did. I don't remember that so well.
mm.
A little fuzzy. Other than that, I said very clearly to them, I need to go home to my family, and I need to face what is deep within me that stirred and moved me to this point. And those are my words now. Back then I probably said, I need to go back and I need to go into therapy. And
Wow.
whatever is within my family that needs to be healed, like whatever it is. And I was just clear as day. And clearly spirit was guiding because they believed me. They didn't doubt it. They felt the truth of it. I signed out. I got a ticket to fly home. I probably flew home within the week. I was fine physically because the near-death experience really healed my mind and my heart and my body.
So there was no more of that internal doubt and struggle anymore.
Mm.
And what's so fascinating, because it's 19 years old, and in your perfections, which is a ancient timing technique, that's the eighth house where you have your Aries sun. You also have Saturn there. So you mentioned a couple of words, and the eighth house is emergencies and sudden events. And
Wow.
when you said you left your body, that's the eighth house. It's the thin veil between the 3D and the 5D. And so much. And Saturn is like karma and our lineage and father time and stress and fear and can be the marker for death, right? Because you have the near death. And then, that Aries, which you mentioned, is the passion. So that is so literal, because that's 19 years old right there in the eighth house. And I'm just so blown away. And
I am too, my
this
goodness.
is why it is just so powerful. And listen, see, this is what I explain to people. The natal birth chart is the map of your life. It's the remembrance of your soul. This is what Kimberly selected before you entered the portal of your mother's womb. You chose your parents. You chose these life lessons and experiences to evolve your soul in this lifetime, to draw you closer to divinity and source, right? Even that moon conjunct Jupiter in Cancer in the 11th house. Like, oh, wow. It's so powerful. So now I really want to know, when did you become, because that's so powerful, right? But like for me, when did you, through all these different transformations in your own life, now where we're at, when did you become this spiritual teacher and mentor? And when did it feel like it was just the next part or the next iteration or continuation of your love and reflecting back and guiding it to others? When was this starting?
What's coming to me as true, which I if it hadn't come to me right now, I probably would have said something different, is when I was building the monastery, what was happening was Spirit, through my words, ended up being an agency for a lot of transformation for everybody involved. So not only was the miracle of the project happening, I was noticing that my presence, just my beingness, was this catalyst for these amazing things happening in the private lives of the people I was working with.
Yeah.
And I hadn't intended that. I wasn't looking to be that role, but
Right.
it was pliable to me. And then, and I had been a healer when I was a little girl and all that. I mean, these gifts have come through, but in the stabilization of my character that was coming through later on. And I was like, wow. Now, I would never have thought of leaving the monastery. And that was a whole illumination in itself that was very dramatic, which I would love your astrological take on it. But when I moved
Well, we have to talk about the year when you left. We have to talk about that.
2001, 34 and a half years old.
Oh, so that was 34 when you left.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think honestly, because that activates the Cancer moon and Jupiter, I think you were complete. And so it was time, because you realized your love and divinity and your connection, it fulfilled its purpose there, but now you had to take it out to heal and grow and share this love and experience with other groups and other people, right? And so that's kind of like at 34, the 11th house actually takes you to like the social network, the groups, organizations, nonprofit, philanthropic work, and quite literally the internet. So and obviously around that time, these things were just like kind of coming online. And, we had our, after 2000 and the, Y2K scare and all that silliness and stuff. But yeah, that was, I think that's really what the answer was. You had to kind of share your abundant blessings and your love. Because think of it like this: the planet Jupiter is at home in Sagittarius and Pisces, but it's exalted in Cancer because our first, right, teacher, preacher, guru, shaman, it is our mother. So Jupiter in Cancer is that divine, nurturing, caring, supportive, protecting, motherly love. And that's the spirit that I feel from you.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I would never have created that as a descriptor for myself, but people experience that over very strongly. So I definitely relate to what you're saying. And Divine Mother, I mean, my experience of Mary at a young age was phenomenal, and different forms, shape shifting into Kuan Yin, and all things like that happening. But yeah, that would make sense. So it was natural. I got a scholarship to do my seminary training, and that was like lovely. And since then, it's just been since I left 23,
Good.
I've really been of service. It's just been, I'm here for people's journeys. And I think because of some of the, not only the openness to love, but even some of the dark places I've gone, there isn't anywhere I can't be with anybody.
Mm.
There's
And that's powerful. You know
oh,
what I mean? Because that means also in the purity of your heart, there isn't that judgment or putting people in categories or boxes. It's connecting with God's love, seeing them as, the love that they are. And I think that's what's so important because, our souls choose these different paths. And I think in the physical 3D realm and body, we can get so caught up in analyzing, assessing, but judging and putting people in categories and boxes. And it's so funny because my whole life I was always a leader, never a follower. And I never wanted to be put in a box, and I never put people in boxes, and I know that, that opens you more up to all the infinite possibilities and meeting people where they're at and seeing the God in them and the humanity in them. And so where does that sort of play? Because I see that you are that and do that so naturally. It's so intuitive for you. So in your group or one-on-one sessions now, share with the audience, like what type of healings or what type of things do you experience to really help people and meet them wherever they're at?
it's multifaceted. It depends on the nature of why I'm working with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that happens usually pretty effortlessly is individuals shift because they feel seen and heard, but not just like the psychology of the seeing and the hearing, reflective listening, but the presencing on the unseen parts of the self. Very often people will, even without words, experience that, and then what happens is the neural pathways introduce new thought that's more aligned with their truth.
Mm.
Their energetics will shift.
Yeah.
I have experienced people going through dramatic physical healings and emotional healings.
Wow.
But more often it's those very subtle things, the things that kind of hold us back, whether we know them or don't know them. And it's an interesting way because I'm not coming at it like a coach, but it's very specific because it's very attentive to what's really going on. What is the God source really doing in relationship with the person that's before me? And that's what comes forward as the core of what happens. And usually people go through shifts that really change their lives in small ways where they're going about what they were doing in a way that's full of spirit. And sometimes in large ways, big career changes or big release of contracts that no longer serve them and things like that. So definitely, I think wherever two or three are gathered, right?
Yeah.
That's what happens.
I love that. So, and things that are so simple are so real and powerful, but yet so true. I think sometimes we, as human beings, as beautiful as we are in design, we try to look or feel like there's needing for the complexities, needing for this, degree or expertise or this or these labels or I've achieved this, when I think not dumbing down, but purely simplifying and getting to the core, the root, where it is really kind of heart and love base.
Mhm.
Most of the answers are right there.
Yeah. Yeah, you said it so well. They are there.
They're right there, and you just are such a joy and a beacon of light. So, okay, so um, do you I don't want to put you on the spot, but before we go, do you have like even maybe a short poem or something you'd like to share, or just, any thoughts because let's be honest, right now, we feel the shift. There's a lot going on. The world is worlding, right? It's very crazy. People have a lot of stress and fear, and I always tell people, turn off the television. That's number one. That's going to create such an ease in your life when you stop watching the television and getting caught up in the fear cycle and the cognitive dissonance and the manipulation and brainwashing.
Yeah.
But I also let people know that we have to vibrate from love, from our heart chakra, right? Joy, gratitude, love, and authenticity.
Yeah.
Right? God made each one of us so unique and so complex and so perfect. And you simply, to honor God, just need to be you. So do you have any last messages? Would you like to share a poem or anything that you'd like to leave the audience and the collective with today?
First, I agree with you on all of that. And yeah, I would love to share a poem.
Oh, great.
Let's see. Okay.
Oh, and by the way, just so you know, when
Yeah.
you mentioned the migraine headaches, that's Saturn in Aries. So sometimes, I would say, maybe lavender by the pillow, massaging the temples, but also because sometimes that can bring in arthritis or rheumatoid arthritis. So a lot more cooling foods, right? We want to drink the warmer waters, room temperature to hot water with lemon or some salt in it. But some of the cooling, fruits, like I think of cucumbers and the blueberries, but even just cooling foods, because Aries and Saturn and your Aries sun, you need movement. As you know, Aries, you guys are busy and active. My father was an Aries, so I've got a lot of love. Got my Aries the Ram back here, but definitely with Aries and Saturn, always remember that it's right. It's think before you react. Don't be overly impulsive. Slow down, and to honor that Saturn, it is to really have a little bit more patience, but think of also sometimes some of the cooling foods, because you are naturally passionate and hot, right? So you got to cool things down a little. So just wanted to share that with you. Oh, it hit home, huh?
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Spaciousness within today, silently revering. The innermost parts of the self irrevocably hailed, placing me into restful states. The sweet allowing opens the door, and I move spontaneously along the paths of divine pining, unwinding into creation, home. I go anywhere and find I belong everywhere.
Yeah. That's wow. Yeah. That's a card, a Hallmark card, a T-shirt, right? I love that. I go anywhere and I feel like, wow, I love that. Yay! That is
Hey!
so beautiful though. Oh my God, see? And this is what I try to tell people, that intentionality with words and how beautifully they can be strung together with such intention and passion and love. They can move mountains. They can move hearts and souls of men and women. And for me, that's how I think of words as a writer and as a MC and a poet. And I try not to waste not one word. And you didn't waste not one word in that. That was beautiful. So thank you for sharing that with the audience. That was so good. I love that. Well, Kimberly, this has truly It's been
I
amazing.
agree. I feel so blessed. I'm glad that you initiated. It's so great to get to know you, and thank you for your wisdom and your insight. And yes.
It's been magical. And, just so you know, with that Scorpio and Neptune in the third house does rule the hands, our words, communications, the younger siblings. So I didn't get to ask about them. And I'm kind of curious if they are spiritually inclined like you in any way. And then also the Neptune Scorpio, it's a generational marker. I have it as well. And it is a very powerful healing energy. So quite literally, as you mentioned earlier, you totally a marker for a Reiki master or metaphysical healer, but you quite literally are healing with your communication, your words, and you speak and write, but then also with your hands. So that's, and then your South Node is there. Well, so that's something you've also done in a past life. So that's beautiful and powerful.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So tell me about the siblings before we go. Are they?
I think everybody in my family has a deep faith. Like my sister's very conservative Catholic.
Okay.
And my brother is a form of Baptist. So faith is a very strong part of their life.
Wow.
It's in some ways we're very different.
Yeah.
It's been a unique and mysterious journey for me since I love them so much. Long for closeness on all these levels. But we meet in goodness. There's a great goodness that prevails in my family. A way that everyone strives towards kindness and sensitivity.
I love that.
Yeah.
I really love that. That is, it's so profound, and you love to hear that in families. With all the work that I do, it's not always the case, not always the story. So, keep that connection. It's powerful. I encourage that with my 4 sons, and try to have these family traditions. And instill that in the love and connective, the connective fluid and connection of love and spirit of family with my 4 sons. So that's really beautiful that you guys have that. And kudos to your parents, right? They did something right. They did a great job. So I thank you again. And so it's KimberlyBraun.com.
Yep, for everything.
Everything's there. It's real simple, right? And I love the poetry, the books, the stories, the sharing, and I cannot wait just for next week to actually meet you in person in Phoenix, Arizona. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'm very excited. So it's going to be a wonderful experience, and I thank you and thank IANDS and all that you do with them and that everyone there does. So again, Kimberly Braun, thank you for being on episode 240 of my Knowledge is Love Astrology podcast.
Congratulations.
Bye, everybody.